Wednesday, August the 16th, 2017, and you've joined Life Talk. I'm Mark Crutcher.
And I'm Renee Hobbs. Glad you guys are with us today.
Absolutely. Fixing to rain outside.
I know.
We've had a lot of rain this year in Texas.
We have. Our summer has been pretty decent.
Yeah, we've only had like 10 or 12 days over 100.
Yeah.
Good. That's good.
That's terrible when you say it like that.
Well, that's good,
but I know, but it's true because
good.
August, there's a ton of 100 days.
What is it? Like about 4 years ago, we had 71 straight days over 100, something like that?
Yeah, it was miserable. My plants died.
Yeah, that's right. They're in plant heaven now.
I guess so.
They're with Jesus.
Oh, okay, well, I'll see them someday.
Yeah, I guess you will.
Okay.
We got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about today. First off, there's somebody, some pro-abortion moron, fixing. Well, I'm being nice about it. I've cleaned up my language.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, they're fixing to start a abortion simulator app, a game that you can play where you're an abortionist and you can do abortions.
I know. I kind of think they did this just to get the pro-lifers and
Fired up.
I really do because a while back Apple wouldn't even approve a fart app. And so they're saying that Apple is not as unlikely going to push this abortion simulator through. But I'm telling you, I mean, you can go and look at the different, the process that it takes you through and the different tools and actually going in and what the abortion looks like and ripping the baby out. I mean, it's just disgusting.
Yep.
It is sick.
Well, these people are sick.
I know.
And basically everything we're talking about today relates to that subject.
Yes.
But anyway, they're going to have this game, and they're going to make a game out of killing babies. Another raging pro-abort activist says promoting abortion is God's calling on her life.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that if she were to read her Bible, that God would probably say differently.
I can promise you, God didn't call her to defend abortion. If God didn't want those babies alive, He can take care of that. He doesn't need this terzo person to jump in there. But what's interesting here is we're seeing more and more of this language. She says, when I found the reproductive justice movement, I found God's calling for my life. Well, the God's calling thing is pure nonsense, and
Right.
I suspect she knows it. If she doesn't know it now, there will come a time when she knows it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things where you say that the human brain is the only thing that can
Deceive itself.
and
Right.
and that's what she's done. She's tried the Catholic Church. It's not warm and loving, and she just didn't feel like she was a part of it. And she grew
Only
up in
because she was a pro-abort. She didn't feel like she could be a
Right.
part of the Catholic Church.
there. Yeah, well,
Anyway, but what I was getting at here, or what I wanted to bring up, was this use of this term reproductive justice. You know, they've moved on from choice, and even some of their own people are saying pro-choice is not.
they do that often with the abortion, the safe, legal, and rare,
Right.
and the T-shirts to try to promote
I had an
abortion.
abortion,
I had an abortion that they're proud of. So they try to do this every once in a while, don't they?
But now they've changed to reproductive justice, as if a
Right.
woman who can't kill her baby is denied justice.
Right.
So no woman prior to Roe versus Wade in the history of the world or history of America had justice because she couldn't kill.
Well,
her.
and the baby that's dying is being justified by
Yeah.
being killed here.
Yep, it's pretty amazing.
Yes, it is.
This story you brought me, we've talked before about the obscenity of the fact that in the case of, for example, Down syndrome babies, which are very lovable, very sweet. I've never known a parent with a Down syndrome baby that didn't say that baby was very special. And if you ever want to read something that's really interesting, I don't know if I've ever brought this up to you or not. Gene Stallings, that used to be the head football coach at Alabama and then was the head coach of the Cowboys, or was a coach at the Cowboys for a while, won a national championship at Alabama. He had a Down syndrome son. And if you ever want to read something really touching and about the way a parent sees a Down syndrome child, go online and read about Gene Stallings and his son.
It'll put you in tears.
Have you read it?
With you?
Oh, did you? I didn't know if I'd shown it to you or not. But it's pretty amazing. And he used to take him to all the Cowboy practices, and he took him to all the practices in Alabama, and he became kind of a mascot for the team.
Yep.
And he died not long ago. And now Gene Stallings, just in the last couple of days, has I don't know if he had a stroke or a heart attack or something, but he's near death too.
Aw.
But
Well, he'll get to see his son, won't he?
Right.
Yeah. Well, and this thing in Iceland is.
yes, that's what we were going to talk. Yeah.
Oh, you were getting there?
Yeah.
Is that they're saying that almost 100% of the Down syndrome babies are being terminated, are being killed in the womb, and which is not true. That's false. I mean, there's at least 2 or 3 babies that are being born with Down syndrome.
But you think about
In
a whole
Iceland.
country where in an entire country only 2 a year are born.
I know.
with Down syndrome. But the interesting thing about this is the media's take on it. And I think if there's one really neat thing about the election of Donald Trump, and I've said this before, it's not only the Supreme Court, which is ginormous, so to speak,
In Texas slang.
and yeah, in Texas slang, but it's the fact that the American media has been exposed to the American people. They finally see what these people are, what we've always known. In the 80s, I wrote a book called Firestorm, in which I talked about the fact that journalism in America does not exist. There is no such thing. And I used to say in speeches I'd give that what's the difference between an honest journalist and Bigfoot? Bigfoot might actually exist.
Oh.
But the fact is,
Yeah.
the American media, whether you like Donald Trump or not, and even some people on the left are saying how Donald Trump is being maligned by the media, they've been exposed for the pack of pathological liars that they are.
Well, and he doesn't hesitate to call them out every single time that
I hope he continues.
that he is being attacked.
But anyway, CBS News sent a reporter to Iceland when this information began coming out. Now, I want to read this statement. With the rise of prenatal screening tests across Europe and the United States, the number of babies born with Down syndrome has significantly decreased, but few countries have come as close to eradicating Down syndrome births as Iceland. They're painting this like it's a great thing. Well, let me tell you something. If you can eradicate, and that's your term you're going to use, you can eradicate Down syndrome by simply killing all the people with Down syndrome, then we can eradicate every social problem.
That's true.
Let's just go and round up all the homeless people. We can eradicate homelessness tomorrow. We round them up and we shoot them through the head, right?
Yeah, basically.
We can eradicate
Right.
poverty.
Right.
We go to South Dallas or we go to whatever part of any city is the poor section of the city. We round all the people up, bring them into a big field, and
Anybody with mental issues, I mean, you name it. It's,
whatever problem
Right.
that the perfect people
Right.
see as a problem.
There's no such thing.
You can eradicate that. But for them to use this kind of terminology, that few countries have come as close to eradicating Down syndrome as Iceland, it's like they discovered a cure for it.
Right.
That's how they eradicate it.
Yeah.
That's how we used to eradicate problems.
Right.
Is we discovered cures for them.
Right.
Now we just kill the people who have the problem.
Well, and they don't talk the girls into doing the screening, but they say that everybody does it. All pregnant women do it, and the babies actually that are born, the 2 a year that are born with Down syndrome, they are very low risk Down syndrome babies, so it's not being
They're high-functioning
high
babies.
functioning, so it's not being picked up, and
Right.
that's why they're surviving.
They slip through the screen.
Yeah, and there is actually a mother there that is speaking out on this that has a Down syndrome baby that's high functioning. So praise God for her.
She says they did the testing. She said, and they asked her if she was pressured. She said it was not pressure, but they told me that most women did it.
Yeah,
And she says it did affect me maybe a little bit.
yeah,
But here is one of the counselors, this reporter asks us about whether this was a moral problem. She says, we don't look at it as a murder. Listen to this. We look at it as a thing we ended.
a thing.
A thing.
A baby is
they
a
ended.
thing.
A baby is
Yeah.
a thing that they ended.
Yep.
It isn't black and white. Life isn't black and white. Life is gray. Maybe you can make that argument, but that doesn't mean black and white does not exist. I'd like to ask this person, is there anything that you see as black and white, or is everything gray? So in other words, if somebody is a racist, you could see that as a shade of gray. It's not black and white. If somebody rapes a 3-year-old child, can you see that as a shade of gray? Or do you acknowledge that there are black and white in the color spectrum. Those two colors do exist in the color spectrum. But here's a question I'd ask you, and then we're gonna take a break for that your pen offer, your free pen offer, and then we're gonna come back.
Yes.
But here's a question I got to ask you about this, because I've thought about this many times over the years. Does abortion stop medical research?
Does it stop it?
Right. Here, let me tell you what I'm thinking about.
Okay.
If you can, quote unquote, eradicate Down syndrome by abortion, why study a cure for it?
They're not in Iceland, obviously.
They're not. And so if you can start doing all this prenatal testing and detect X, Y, Z, whatever, A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever disease or condition you can detect, it seems like every time we see a scientific article come out where they say a new test has been developed that can identify X problem in the womb earlier, there is always a sentence in that article that says this allows parents to make a decision earlier in the pregnancy.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
They say the earlier the better. The first trimester, it doesn't matter,
But it's still a baby.
right.
But the fact is, or my thinking is, this is affecting the medical research community. Why put millions and millions of dollars into studying a cure for Down syndrome or a cure for this disease or that disease?
If we're going to kill them all
If
off
you're going to kill them all,
anyways.
they've eradicated Down syndrome, right, in Iceland.
Right.
So why go looking for a cure for something that they can eradicate so
Right.
easily by killing the baby?
Well, so if anybody's in Iceland doing any research on Down syndrome baby and people are donating to that, then they just need to cut those funds off.
Right, exactly.
It's not needed.
Let's be intellectually honest about
Right.
it and just say we're not going to do that kind of research.
Yeah.
We know for a fact that the medical community is affected, the practice of medicine's affected, because we've seen it here where the doctors have used abortion to bail them out of some mistake that they made earlier in a woman's pregnancy.
That's right. Giving them a prescription that shouldn't have been given
Right.
because they were pregnant and didn't know it. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so the doctor comes along and says, uh-oh, my office screwed up and didn't test this woman for pregnancy.
We need to try to talk her into aborting ASAP.
Right. And we've seen that time and time again on our medical malpractice stuff, where doctors use abortion as a bailout for their bad medical practice. Is the research community now looking at this and saying, why are we wasting our money and time studying a cure for these things when we can just kill the baby and eradicate it that way?
Yeah. Something that they need to think about.
It goes back to what we've said here many, many times, Renee. We've said it time and again. Abortion bastardizes everything it touches.
Yes.
Everything it touches, it screws up.
Yes, it is.
Every single thing. Well, listen, let's take a minute here for you to give people information about how they can get a free pro-life pen. And when we come back, we've got a really, really almost mind-boggling video for people to watch. We'll be right back.
Hi, have you seen this pen? It's really neat, and people all over America are using them to show their support for the pro-life cause. They're available from Life Dynamics for $5, but because you're a Life Talk viewer, I'm going to make you an offer you can't resist. If you don't already have one of these pens, go to lifedynamics.com/prolifepen. Then when you check out, use the promo code at the bottom of the screen and I'll send you one of these pens as my gift. I'll even pay the postage. If you prefer, you can also order by phone at area code 940-380-8800. Now you can't beat that price, right? So order yours today and make sure all of your pro-life friends get one for themselves. Again, go to lifedynamics.com/prolifepen and use a promo code below or call 940-380-8800.
Welcome back. We're going to let you watch a video here that is pretty unbelievable,
Frustrating, to say the least. Irritating.
irritating.
I want to go strangle her. Just kidding. I'm done.
Yeah, you don't know whether this woman is to be pitied or scorned. But anyway, this is a couple of guys. I don't even know who these guys are. Y'all seem to have heard of them. One of them's an actor, and I don't know who the other guy is. Anyway, some guy named Franco and Mickelson sat down with this woman that's a philosophy
professor.
at Princeton University.
Yeah.
And she's a pro-abort. Her name is Liz Harmon. And she gives her defense. Now, this video is about 5 minutes, but believe me, it's worth the time to watch.
I'm not sure if it is, but
Yeah. Anyway, she gives her reasons for why abortion should be legal and why abortion is acceptable behavior. And I want you just to listen to this, and we'll come back and talk about it.
In some of my work, I defend a liberal position about early abortion. So I defend the view that there's nothing morally bad about early abortion. So a lot of people think, well, it's permissible to have an abortion, but something bad happens when the fetus dies. And I think if a fetus hasn't ever been conscious, it hasn't ever had any experiences, and we abort it at that stage, that actually nothing morally bad happens. And this view might seem unattractive because it might seem that it dictates a cold attitude towards all early fetuses. But what I think is that actually, among early fetuses, there are two very different kinds of beings. So, James, when you were an early fetus, and Elliot, when you were an early fetus, all of us, I think that we already did have moral status then. But we had moral status in virtue of our futures, in virtue of the fact that we were the beginning stages of persons. But some early fetuses will die early in pregnancy, either due to abortion or miscarriage. And in my view, that's a very different kind of entity. That's something that doesn't have a future as a person, and it doesn't have moral status.
Why would we think that what's actually going to happen to a fetus in the future is going to make this big difference between having some moral status and not? I mean, it seems like...
And can't you only judge that in hindsight?
Right, so there's a real question of how could we know? Well, often we do know. So often if we know that a woman is planning to get an abortion and we know that abortion is available to her, then we know that that fetus is going to die, that it's not a kind of thing like the fetuses that became us. It's not something with moral status, on my view. Often we have reason to believe that a fetus is the beginning stage of a person. So if we know that a woman is planning to continue her pregnancy, then we have good reason to think that her fetus is something with moral status, something with this future as a person.
So what you're saying is if the fetus is never destined to become a person, it doesn't have moral status. If a woman decides to have an abortion with an early fetus, just that act or that intention negates the moral status of that early fetus. Just because if she goes out and has an abortion, she's pretty certain that it's not going to become a person.
Right. So it might look like, on my view, abortion is permissible because you had the abortion.
Yeah.
But that abortion wouldn't have been permissible if you didn't have the abortion.
Right.
Well, that's not quite
Okay.
That's not quite the view for, I think, two different reasons.
Okay.
So one reason is that you have moral status, and in my view, back when you were an early fetus, you had moral status. But it's not that aborting you would have been wrong, because if your mother had chosen to abort her pregnancy, then it wouldn't have been the case that you would have had moral status, because you would have died as an early fetus. So she would have been aborting something that didn't have moral status. So my view isn't that if you do abort, abortion is okay, but if you don't abort, abortion would have been wrong. But what it turns out is that it's a contingent matter that you have moral status. You actually have moral status, but you might not have counted morally at all. If you had been aborted, you would have existed, but you just would have had this really very short existence in which you wouldn't have mattered morally. Another thing that you were bringing up was the idea that on my view, in aborting, we're taking away the moral status. That the fetus would have had moral status, but then by aborting, we take it away. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think the right way to look at it is that just given the current state of the fetus, it's not having any experiences, there's nothing about its current state that would make it a member of the moral community. It's derivative of its future that it gets to have moral status. So it's really that the future endows moral status on it. And if we allow it to have this future, then we're allowing it to be the kind of thing that now would have moral status. So in aborting it, I don't think you're depriving it of something that it independently has.
Well,
Liz Harmon, James Franco, and Elliot Mickelson think you are a complete idiot. I am sorry.
I don't know if these guys are pro-aborts or not. I kind of suspect that they are.
But the looks on their face, whether they're pro-aborts or not, the looks on their face that they were giving her was like, you're crazy, woman.
Well, she is. And, it's interesting to note that they really didn't respond to her. Because
How can you?
What do you say? What can you possibly say about this? I mean, it's gibberish, and it's physically impossible
Yeah.
to respond to gibberish. You can't do it.
Well, there's two different kinds of beings, and she was talking about the moral status. If you're going to abort, then the baby doesn't have any moral status at all. But if you're going to keep the baby, it has moral status.
All of a sudden.
All of a sudden, and as far as the miscarriages and abortions,
She can't draw the distinction.
you can't do that.
Right.
One, you're intentionally killing. The other one
It's a naturally occurring.
is a naturally occurring thing. So
It's the woman is obviously deranged, or she's.
well, she kept going around in circles.
I'm sitting there wondering. I'm watching the thing, wondering. I wonder if she's sitting there thinking to herself while she's doing that. I'm making an ass of myself.
Sorry, just kind of
No.
slipped. It's true though.
What can you say? But you know what?
This is the thing. She was digging a hole and she just kept talking and talking and she couldn't get herself out.
Couldn't
So
get
the
out.
more she kept talking, the better she felt.
There's an old saying: when you find out you're at the bottom of a hole, quit digging.
Right.
She's never heard that.
Apparently
But
not.
but the scary thing is, why would she even think this stuff to begin with? If she was thinking those things, she should have stopped in the middle and said, "Wait a minute. Start the camera over." I went down a trail. I don't know what I was thinking. Let me give you my real.
Yeah.
But this is what she believes.
Yeah, it is truly what she believes.
And I'm sure that as a professor at a prestigious Ivy League school, Princeton University, she considers herself an intellectual, obviously.
She needs to be fired.
Well, she should have never been there to begin with. Somebody surely picked up on this during the interview process. But, it's George Orwell who wrote 1984, the book 1984, years ago said something that it applies here. He said, some things are so stupid, only an intellectual can believe them. That applies here. But here's my question. This is a very expensive, very difficult to get into Ivy League school, Princeton. You know how expensive college education is, even at a regular university like University of North Texas here in Denton. Believe me, I know.
I
I
don't.
graduated, my daughter got a master's from there. I know exactly how expensive it is. But imagine that you got your kid your kid was able to get into Princeton, and you're footing the bill for this, or they're footing the bill for it. Somebody's paying for it, right? And they're being taught by nitwits like this. I mean, you might as well be just flushing your money down the toilet. Just throw it down the toilet and flush.
Yeah.
And let me.
Yeah, that's a scary thought, isn't it? It really is.
It really
That
is.
you're trusting your children to somebody like her.
To some nitwit like this. The other thing you need to remember, I don't want to just pick on Princeton because I think that in a lot of schools around the country, this is what you find. But let's also remember who else is a professor at Princeton. Professor of bioethics at Princeton is Peter Singer.
Oh, that's right.
He's a professor of bioethics. So you've got one man who is a complete and total moral degenerate, Peter Singer, who openly advocates that parents ought to have a year or so after a baby is born
To kill him.
to
or
see
her.
if they bond with the baby, and if they don't, or if they decide they're not ready, they're not responsible, they're not ready to be parents, they should be able to take that baby into a doctor and have him euthanized or her euthanized. This man publicly advocates that, right?
Yes, makes you wonder if they've gone to lunch together.
Oh, they know each other. She's in the philosophy department, he's in the bioethics department. I mean, I'd hate to be sitting at a table trying to carry on a conversation with these two. Lord knows where that might be going. But I think the other thing we need to before we get out of this show, the other thing we need to recognize is that yes, this woman is obviously a little loopy, and this whole thing that she did, you can't even respond to it because it's such gibberish. You can't even.
They couldn't even respond to
They
it.
couldn't. They're just sitting there with their mouths hanging open, like, what is she talking
Right.
about? But let's point out something else. although most defenses for abortion aren't this convoluted and bizarre to listen to, they're equally as illogical. You can't make a logical argument for the wholesale slaughter of millions of babies. You just can't do it. So this is one of the things I used to love about the old debates, when there used to be debates on the abortion issue, and I did a lot of debates on college campuses. They were so easy to debate against because their arguments were so just abysmally illogical that the second that you saw the illogical part of it, the whole thing came apart like wet toilet paper.
Yeah.
And so this one is more illogical, but it is so illogical you can't argue against it. But the fact is, you can't come up with a rational, logical, morally defensible argument in favor of legal abortion. It's not physically possible. I'd have more respect for these people if they just come out and say, "Look, I know it can't be defended. I know it's wrong. I know it's murder, but I think people ought to be allowed to do it." I'd have more respect for that person than the person who tries to do these verbal gymnastics like this person did, or like the people that you normally encounter trying to come up with some just completely buffoonish argument to
Yeah.
defend abortion.
Yep.
But anyway, this is kind of what you experience, and we just thought it'd be neat if, I'm sure a lot of people out there in the audience had already seen this video.
Yeah.
But a lot of others haven't.
Right.
And so we thought
This is our take on it.
this is our take on it and brought it to you. So
Yep.
you got anything else there?
No, just blessings to you too, Jeffrey, and hey, Elaine. But no, if anybody has any comments or questions or suggestions for shows, we would love to hear those, your feedback. And you can just get in touch with me, either email or call or however you want to get in touch with me. And you'll also get a mug if we use your suggestion.
Or if we have you on Life Talk or use your question, whatever, we will send you a Life Talk mug. I mean, a Life Dynamics mug. We'd love to send one to everybody that calls in. So
Yep.
just let us hear from you. In the meantime, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how this killing is going to stop. We will see you on Friday.
See you Friday. Bye, Melissa.